Hello and welcome to our first session of 2021. And we are back with another fabulous discussion in PRPOI's 33rd episode of Saturday Live. PR professionals have been busier than ever all through 2020. We both know that, right? It's been a great year for the PR industry in India. I'm sure it's been the same for you as well. Now, after all the celebrations have died down and we set about planning for 2021, I'm sure you would have realized that this year has brought you its own set of challenges. While brands turn to PR for counsel, strengthening our position, the industry seems to be losing out on its core strength, earned conversations in editorial media. And I'm sure all of us have faced this. Editorial earned media placements are getting tougher by the day for most PR professionals, with publications turning to paid brand models for placements on one end and shutdowns on the other. A good chunk of the PR industry is reconsidering its approach towards brand building and reputation management. One of the key buzzwords that has been floated around for growth is owned media. Today, we have an excellent panel with us who will share their insights with us on this new buzzword. But before we do that, before we introduce our panel, a big shout out to our media partner, Advertising Media Insider India, and our industry partner, PR Boutiques International, and of course, our excellent content curators and my co-founders, Sonali Sokhal and Pooja Trehan. Without much ado, let me introduce our first panelist, Nivedeeta Moirangthem, Communication Operations Manager, IKEA India. In a career spanning 23 plus years, Nivedeeta has worked in the areas of corporate communication and advertising. In her 19 plus years in IKEA, she has worked with IKEA Foundation, sustainability, IKEA Purchasing and Retail in many areas of external and internal communication. She is a firm believer that communication can be a powerful change and positioning driver for a brand, and we love that. She joins us today from Bangalore, so welcome to our panel, Nivedeeta.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Thank you for joining us. So I'm going to take a minute to introduce our other panelists as well. Our second panelist is Paul Ferriga, PRBI member, president and chief storyteller, WordWrite PR. With over 3+ decades of experience in various forms of communication, he's passionate about storytelling. Paul's passion for storytelling inspired him to form WordWrite in 2002 and to write a book on the importance of storytelling in business. I was already skipping ahead and talking about the book. The book is called Finding Your Capital S Story, which has recently been published. If you want to look at finding your story, you might want to pick this up. Under his leadership, WordWrite has grown into Pittsburgh region's largest independent public relations agency and is a perennial top-ranked firm in the annual O'Dwyer national rankings. Apart from being the region's go-to crisis agency, they have also pioneered owned media in the industry. He joins us today from Pittsburgh, USA. Thank you, Paul, for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, and it's an honor to be here for the first episode of 2021.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I'll take a minute to introduce our third panelist. Our last panelist is Mohit Balachandran, restaurateur and food connoisseur. A restaurateur by profession, he has set up Soda Bottle Opener Wala and successfully taken the brand to 4 cities. So if you love that brand, this is the person that you need to know. He's also connected deeply with the online world of food. Again, if you follow Chowder Singh, then you know him already. He writes for NDTV and blogs under the name Chowder Singh. He also works on the business side of food tech and develops new markets for Easy Diner, India's top restaurant reservation platform in the premium segment. He has helped each one of them develop some interesting owned content. He joins us from Delhi today. Welcome to our panel, Mohit.
Thank you so much, Sarunji.
So glad to have all of you here today. But before we get started, I want to understand from each one of you, and for all the PR professionals who will be watching this, what got you started in PR? Nivedeeta, would you like to go first?
Yes, hi, good morning again, everyone. Very happy to be part of the panel. I would say that I did not land here by accident. After my graduation, I really wanted to study communication. So I joined the Indian Institute of Mass Communication and studied advertising and PR there. And then, of course, the rest is working with advertising agency for some time. And then when I joined IKEA, it was, navigating through different topics because IKEA was quite a new company and IKEA in India at that time. So, it landed me, I was passionate about what I was doing. So it landed me, 19 years later, having worked in different parts of IKEA in India. So, yeah, thank you.
Awesome.
Here.
Yeah. Paul, what about you? What got you started in PR? And you're a journalist, right?
Yes, then that's how it happened for me. I've spent the better part of 4 decades in communications. The first 20 as a journalist. I did everything from local reporting and investigative reporting to covering the White House and covering the U.S. Congress. So a lot of the things that happened in the States in the last week are in many ways personal to me. I got into PR because you can't, it's not the job of a journalist to be telling all the stories that companies and brands want to tell. But journalistic talents and skills are really important to doing a good job telling those stories on behalf of companies and brands. And that was exciting to me.
Absolutely. And Mohit, what got you started in communication?
So I've been a restaurateur pretty much all of my adult life, work life. And why I joined food tech was the business has changed. It's no longer you set up a product, price it well, locate it well, and a restaurant would do well in the earlier days. But it's no longer true. You also now need to know how to distribute your product. So it's very, very important that you understand it's not enough to just set up a product, but also to communicate and to distribute your product in the right way.
Absolutely. That's a very valid, reason to get into communication. And I think every business needs it. Before we delve into owned media, because we already have questions coming in, and I think we've got a lot lined up already for you. For the benefit of our audience, I would like you to, help us understand what is owned media and set context there, because I understand that when you move organizations, when you move agencies, everybody has a different definition or everybody has a different way to define owned media. So how do you define it in your work process? Yeah. Mohit, you want to go first on that?
So owned media is basically pages that you can own, be it your own website, a blog site, Instagram accounts, or having your own page on Easy Diner or any other, like in the US you have an open table. So you control all of them with your own blog and your own website.
Right.
You can pretty much control your entire narrative. And
Okay. Paul, help us understand what constitutes owned media, an agency perspective.
So from the agency perspective, everything Mohit shared is absolutely true in the United States as well. And what I'm going to talk about in our session today is a specific kind of owned media called, in the States, brand journalism. And it's applying the techniques and the style of journalism to your own content and becoming a publisher right alongside editorial media.
Right. Interesting. Nivedeeta, how do you look at defining it in your organization?
Yeah, all of that have been mentioned is also applicable to us from our within IKEA. We consider everything that we can, all the channels that we leverage on to talk about the brand in our own way is considered media. For example, of course, all of our social media channels, our website, they are media, but we also consider our store, for the IKEA store, as really an important channel for communication. So besides that, we also have a prioritization for using not only our leaders but also many of our co-workers as spokespeople, not only for talking to the media but talking on their own social media platforms to friends and community. So it's a little bit larger than just the traditional medias that know of course, they are true for us as well. Yeah, but that's how
Okay, okay. So, Nivedeeta, the first question is for you. How, when, and why did you decide to incorporate into your brand communication plan? Because IKEA being IKEA, right? Why did you feel the need to create own media, channels for communication with your audience?
Well, I would say a natural transition. 15 years ago, we did not have so many channels to use, but with the opening of the media landscape and with how things have changed, especially during the last year during COVID, we've had or we've seen the potential and the opportunity to use that to not only control our messaging, yes, but to amplify what we stand for and what is the purpose of the brand, right? As it's a great opportunity for us not only to create content but also to reach out in a locally relevant way, in a way that we make sense, we are meaningful, all with the intention of building more trust and integration with the brand, because IKEA in India is quite a new brand. In the world, it is more than 80 years old, but we are just about we're just so old in India. We opened the Bombay store in December, so we are still finding our feet. We are iterating as we go along, but it's really exciting to see that the response has been great. It's a great way to also look at how we can amplify all other channels. It's not only
Right.
we don't look at it as a side, but that's how.
Okay, so it's an add-on to and the existing channels of communication that already exist.
Channels of communication. It's one more way of being able to demonstrate and position the brand.
Okay, so the next question is for Paul. Paul, why did you feel as an agency the need to create or pioneer owned media, in your community, and when did you decide to do this? Right? Can you tell us a little bit about the owned media that you've created?
Sure. So for the last 3 years, we have been publishing the Pittsburgh 100. We're part of a network of 42 such publications around the world. The publication nearest to India is in Dubai. So the 100 concept is based upon research of CEOs in the United States. What did CEOs want to read to learn information about their communities? So there's the Atlanta 100, the Pittsburgh 100, the Oklahoma 100, et cetera, et cetera. More recently, there are 100 publications focused on areas such as travel or such as engineering. The goal is to give the readers a fast read, 100 words, 100 seconds of video or less. And all this is happening at agencies because editorial media is shrinking in the United States, and the outlets for us to share our clients' stories are disappearing. We're becoming publishers ourselves.
Interesting. So, and Mohit, why did you feel the need to start own media? Because where food is concerned, I think everybody in India is a foodie, right? And everybody with a phone is a blogger, and we love sharing food pictures. I'm sure there is lots of other mediums for you to communicate. Why did you feel that every restaurant or every food setup that you did, there was a need for owned media? What did media not cover, or editorial media did not pay attention to, that you felt that own media has to be done?
So I'll give you the example of Soda Bottle of Navala. So we set up our own Twitter account. We, Instagram, Facebook, to reach out to a different set of audiences. Twitter has its own set of audience, Facebook has its own set of audience, and so does Instagram. But more importantly, we set up our own website and created a blog in that, which was an integral part of the homepage. I think Instagram is great, so is Twitter and Facebook. But your own website, you can control the narrative, and you can reach out to the customers with what you want to communicate, what you think is the brand. And it's also very important for a restaurant to look at transactions. And having your own website or on a page on something like Easy Diner or Open Table helps you with more and more transactions and leading to more and more business.
Interesting. Okay, so that's what you thought about when you started creating those owned platforms for them. And I might say, let me just add, they are wonderful ones. I love the ones that you've created with Easy Diner. Very, very, very visually appealing as well. Yeah. So this is a question for the panel, all of you, right? All the panelists. Why do you think there is so much of curiosity in owned media now? From what I understand from our past conversations and everything that I read about it, this has existed for, let's say, a good part of the last decade, right? And very slowly it's been transitioning and becoming a part of a PR professional's scope of work. Why the need for, there is a sudden high interest, a sudden curiosity in making sure that owned media is part of a PR campaign or a PR plan, right? Nivedeeta, would you like to go first on that?
Yeah, it's a little bit like what I've already mentioned, Jeet. It gives you the opportunity to create the content that we want our audiences. You can control the timing, right? Then
Right.
as relevant or as creative as possible. We have that, so we have that power to use that.
Right.
Of course, it's the changing media landscape in the world. We need to be aware that everybody's media today. What we say and do. There is a very thin line between internal, external, social, online, offline. So everything is merging, and here we are. At that point, I would say where to be really looking at all the channels in a holistic way, and use the basics of communication. Why do we do it? What do we do? And how do we do? Who does it? When do we do it? So really look at owned media as one of the different channels that we can leverage on, and use it to our advantage. All communicators to reinvent themselves also, and look at how the world has changed around us, and how we need to be more effective when it comes to communication. Yeah.
Absolutely. You don't think it's got anything to do with the fact that editorial media is shrinking in our country as well, and it's getting increasingly difficult to get those earned conversations for PR for the PR industry?
It's also, I mean, in India, and India is one of the few countries where we have so many medias, print
Right.
medias, now even social and online. And of course, I mean, it's a global thing that we're going through now, that media is shrinking, but I would look at it a little bit different to say that it's not because of shrinking media that we should go and use own media, but it's because we need to complement all the channels, depending on the relevance. For example, if we do a really good job on our own media and talk about interesting things, give good examples, relate to the local society, then it's also an opportunity for for earned media to amplify that, right? So it will become an attraction for media to catch on to that. In the same way, if we have something that is really good on earned media and apply it on our own media, it's a way of spreading the message even more. So I would look at it more as a holistic approach rather than each other in silos. Yes.
Okay,
So.
interesting. So they complement each other in that sense. Yeah. Moin, have you ever had this experience where, let's say, the stories that you have curated yourself, right, or the owned media that you have created for the brands that you work with, have themselves become a story?
Would you rephrase the question, please?
So for example, the stuff that you've done with Soda Bottle Opener Wala or with Easy Diner, the owned media that you have created, has that in itself become a story for editorial media?
I think it's still early days for restaurants in the food world.
Right.
Not everyone is looking at owned media so closely in India. So I think it's a long way to go off, and especially PR professionals, it's not something that I hear very often. So I think a lot more work needs to be done with, I mean, it might be different in other industries, but in the food world, it's still not, I don't see a lot of focus. I mean, Instagram accounts, yes, But other than that, developing your own blog, your own website, controlling your own narrative, telling your own story, I think that is still, there's a lot that needs to be done in the food world.
Okay, understood. Paul, how has it evolved in your country? Because I believe you guys started off much earlier than us. And is it now part and parcel of the scope of work that is expected from a PR professional?
It is, Taranjeet. It most absolutely is. And in the United States, the implosion of traditional editorial media is one of the major reasons why publications like the Pittsburgh 100, which is a digital e-zine delivered primarily by email and also a website, exists. It's a second level of owned media. Blogs and websites in the United States are 25, 30 years old, and they're foundations of owned media for sure. The reason why a publication like the Pittsburgh 100 exists is to take it to the next level and create, if you will, almost a journalistic style cocktail party where influencers and business decision makers can meet and consume content from various brands in one place. The goal is to be educational and informative and not salesy, much like traditional editorial media is supposed to be.
Okay, so I'm curious, how do you balance that with your media community? Because I'm sure if you're looking at, curating, let's say, a news feed yourself, right? You are directly competing with the media that you're pitching to on the other end. So how do you balance that out?
Well, so that's been very interesting. And my colleagues in other cities in the States have had the same experience. We find that because journalists in the United States are so overworked and so strapped, they like our publications because it gives them a source of story ideas. Some of the greatest compliments I've received for our publication have come from journalists, not from clients. Now, clients like what we do, don't get me wrong. But as PR professionals, when a journalist says to you, hey, I read the Pittsburgh 100 all the time, it's a great source of stories for us, that's probably the highest compliment that a PR professional could get, other than having the journalist write a story themselves, right?
Absolutely. Nivedeeta, has that ever happened with your, with IKEA, in that sense that a journalist has come to you and said that, I read this on your LinkedIn page or on the blog that you have, and, you should have given it to me first? You're on mute. Has that ever happened with you?
Able to hear me?
Yes, we are.
Yes.
Sorry, I did not hear the question. There was a back noise. Was it for me?
Yes, it's for you. Has it ever happened with you where, let's say, a journalist has come back to you and said, I read about this on your LinkedIn page or on your blog, and you should have probably given it to me first?
Yes, it has been noticed, especially for us within IKEA, we have a very strong priority for people, for sustainability as we know it, but it's called People and Planet, and it's a very relevant topic in India as well today. So whenever we speak about in recent times about our community engagement, but also our work with resource efficiency and around the world, and how we are working with becoming totally sustainable by 2030. So whenever we go out with topics, the question is not why didn't you give it first. The question is more, we can see more curiosity and then an interest to take that further into other channels. So we and it's very welcome, actually. So that's a way also.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I'm going to pick a few questions from our audience. We've got a lot of questions pouring in. And I think this is a PR professional at work. How do you measure success in this space? Talk about measurement here, right? Mohit, do you want to take a shot at this first?
So success for me, divided into two aspects with regards to communication. One is the branding aspect. So let's say an Instagram or a Twitter account or a Facebook, and how are you growing in terms of numbers? How good is your engagement? The second, as I mentioned earlier, is transactions. How are your transactions growing? Are you getting bookings in a restaurant from your own media, from your Instagram pages, from your own website? So I think the success with technology can be measured with numbers. Earlier, it was not possible. Like, you gave a newspaper ad, and you wouldn't really know how many. What was the major effect of that? What did it lead to? But I'm not saying that it's not important. It is. It's still relevant. It's still important. But you could never really measure it. Now you can, and that's how with the new tools you can measure your success.
Absolutely. Paul, how does that conversation go when you have to present? Let's say you've gotten a brand, you've gotten a client, and you've done some fantastic brand journalism for them with your own media, and you have to give a report, right? What does that constitute? How does that conversation go?
So one of the things that's really important about the 100 publications across the network, and as I said earlier, there are now 40 of them, is that they're all built on the same platform. And that platform was designed from the ground up to allow measurement and to create a white label environment for the email newsletters. So for instance, in Pittsburgh, we have 46,000 subscribers. And one of the things that the headquarters office for the 100 companies, all the publications, does is work very hard to make sure that all those emails are not caught up in spam. They get through to people, that they're actually read. On the brand end, it's our job as the brand journalists at each publication to make sure we're creating stories that have a call to action for the brand. So every story includes a link that takes the readers, the viewers, wherever the brand wants them to go. Almost always it's somewhere on their website to take some kind of an action. So for example, we did a story some time ago for the Pittsburgh Opera. It was for a special offer for tickets for the opera. We've done the same with restaurants and other kinds of brands. You want to have that tangible result from your own media.
Absolutely. We would love to see one of these reports from you, if it's possible, for our PRPOI members. Even if a template, I think everybody can use that. I mean, it'll be really, really beneficial for each one of them. If it's possible, would love to. Yeah. I know I'm putting you on a spot there, but we'll have that conversation. Nivedeeta, the next question is for you. Our audience wants to know a successful owned media case study from you that you've undertaken in your current role.
Yes, it's so we don't. It's about. I will give you an example about LinkedIn. LinkedIn globally is quite successful when it comes to group working on this channel, but it's something that we did not have as part of our social media bouquet, as we call it. We started with Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, but LinkedIn was we knew it was really important, but it's also it takes time to build on all the different channels. So we started with an approach for LinkedIn, wherein we have the official channel, yes, but we also are using our CEO or the country manager in for many different topics. We also want to use different spokespeople, and I can share with you that currently what we're working towards is to share out interesting or stories about our own co-workers on LinkedIn, because IKEA is a very new setup, and it's in India, and also we don't we have many different job titles and designations which are not really common in the in the usual retail environment. For example, we have a job title called shopkeeper, who is really responsible for a big part of the retail business in the store, responsible, has key targets, responsible for the team, for the people. But shopkeeper can have a different connotation, for example, in the Indian context. So how do we familiarize our audiences with how we do things, what we do, and what does it mean for us is really important. So one of the things that we are planning to roll out and use LinkedIn for is to share examples and stories about our own co-workers. So that is in the works.
Interesting. We'll all watch out for that. Mohit, would you want to share some case study or some examples of how owned media has really worked for the brand that you're working with?
I can tell you. I will come back to the places that I work with, but I think great storytelling. A brand that I really admire is Bombay Canteen and their Instagram account,
Yeah.
and how it's really great storytelling, and I really admire how they tell their stories through their Instagram page. At Easy Diner, I'll give you an example of what we did during the lockdown. Uh, we pretty much out of work, restaurants were shut, and so we went online. I got chefs from across the country to start doing live sessions, and that was really an eye opener, that how you can build brands of your own own media and for others, and reach out to a very large audience even when there's nothing happening.
And I remember seeing that as well. Lovely stuff. And Bombay Canteen is something that I think all of us admire. Love their Instagram page. Paul, coming to you, would you want to share a successful case study that you've done with owned media?
Sure. So for much of the history of the Pittsburgh 100, we've worked with a law firm that specializes in business litigation. In every issue of the publication, they've had an article, let's call it news you can use, everything about taxes to bankruptcy considerations, COVID-19. And those articles link every time, as I said earlier, to the firm's website. And those articles are the number 2 source of inbound traffic to the law firm's website after LinkedIn.
Absolutely. And I think it would have been very beneficial for them, especially a brand in that category. Okay, so the next question is for both our Indian panelists, Nivedeeta and Mohit. One of our audiences wants to know, between paid media and owned media, right? I think a lot of publications now are also pushing owned media, paid brand proposals. I know there are so many when we have these conversations in our PR groups for a particular story or a particular publication, and they are sent an email with a rate card or a proposal that they would want them to take to their clients. It's becoming increasingly tough for them to kind of balance that out. So our audience wants to know, how does authentic storytelling find a place in between owned media and paid media? Nivedeeta, you want to take this first?
Taranjit, you'll have to repeat the question because there was a call coming in. So, yeah.
Not a problem. How does authentic storytelling find a place in between paid media and owned media?
Storytelling always has to be authentic. There is no other way. Whether we, if there is no connect with the audience to what we are saying, then it really doesn't matter how much content we push out or how much we say. So I would really say that it has to have it has to have a real connect to the business. It has to have a context, and also authentic and genuine, so that we are able to build credibility and trust. Otherwise, it's just another piece of content. So we always look at how this will impact the customers who are listening to it, our consumers who are listening to this, and how also it will impact our business in the long run. And there are no shortcuts.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I would say that.
Absolutely. Mohit, I want to understand from you, from a brand perspective, when you look at creating an owned media property, right? What is the kind of research that you do to understand what the audience wants?
Sorry, you were breaking there. Can you repeat the question?
Yeah. So before when you start creating an owned media platform for the brands that you work with, what is the kind of research that you do that helps you understand this is what my audience wants? This is the direction that we need to take, or this is the kind of stuff that we need to do under owned media. What is the kind of research that you do?
So, when you're doing your own media, basically you control the narrative that you want to share.
Right.
Coming back to your earlier question, what we had put to Nivedeeta, I also had a point to make there. So I think both paid and, of course, earned media is it's really good. Owned media and paid media both are very, very relevant. Owned media is more about brand building. At the end, you might or might not get transactions or a lot of transactions out of it. And if you need the business, then I think you need to look at seriously paid media to generate transactions. And that's what you should look to paid media for, to generate more and more transactions for you. So I'll give an example that for restaurants, especially the popular ones, the slots of, let's say, 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. for dinner would be busy, but 6 to 8 would be empty. So you can actually use paid media, give deals on your own media, or use paid media to fill up your slots, which are relatively weak. And that's where I'll give an example of Easy Diner, where we help generate bookings for restaurants, and you can actually limit the number of packs you get per slot. So that's how we've evolved the brand.
Okay.
So restaurants can use us to fill up their empty slots, and when it's full, they can tell us we're full, and we'll send the business somewhere else. So both are relevant, paid and owned. Coming back to yes.
Yeah. Research. So we were talking about research.
Yes. So today it's very important. It's just become an explosion of information. Right? There's so much information that is thrown at you. I was reading somewhere that Instagram algorithms are no longer about just sharing pictures, and they actually promote posts that share long stories along with them. And earlier, let's say 5 years ago, it was not something that was accepted. It was not something that was looked forward to. But now it's increasingly becoming more and more important that you do proper research and you do your storytelling in the right way.
Right. Okay, so from what I hear, Paul, I want your perspective on this. A case can be made that this is something that is better suited to an advertising agency, content agency, or a digital agency. How do you make that case for a PR agency to handle owned media?
So I think the most important thing, and I don't want this to sound like a criticism, but it probably will. Many people in public relations are journalists by training, or were journalists by training, and they understand how to share an authentic story. Unfortunately, especially in the United States, what we see far too often with advertising agencies, they don't know how to have a conversation, and everything in the digital age is a conversation. The audience that you're trying to reach has to be engaged. You just can't make everything about you. You can't always be talking about the brand. Buy my stuff, buy my stuff, buy my stuff, buy my stuff. So the 100 publications, first and foremost, educational, informative, and not salesy. That's what people are looking for. All the research that we've seen in the States, especially among younger generations, what here we call the millennials and Gen Z, they don't like advertising. And so the people who are trained in advertising don't always have the right skills to reach people. It's that sort of journalistic training, which typically you find more in the PR realm as well. In the old days, when all you were dealing with is editorial media, you had to be persuasive. You had to have a conversation with the journalist. And that's a skill that wasn't required really in advertising. You just bought your advertising and you said whatever you wanted to say about your product or your brand. So the ability that PR people have to have that two-way conversation and dialogue is really helpful in getting eyeballs and attention in a digital age.
Absolutely. So what is a better combination for PR professionals to grow towards? Would it be PR plus content? Would it be PR plus digital? Or would it be PR plus advertising? What is that skill set that they need to kind of start working on to be able to handle owned media in a better format?
So I think the most important thing is the ability to communicate. This episode 33, the first of 2021, in a year from now, there's going to be another social media platform. These are just tools.
Right.
If you think of, I always give the example of remote Africa, where there's no fresh water. When you're bringing fresh water to a community, nobody stands around, like at a digital agency and says, oh my goodness, look at the pipes. Look how big they are and how beautiful they are. They say, oh my God, thank goodness we have fresh water in this village, right? So why the people at digital agencies stand around and they look at the pipes? Look at the beautiful pipes we made. That's not the point. The point is getting the brand and the company to your customers and having that conversation. So 5 years from now, who knows what the most prominent social media platform is going to be? Well, it's talking about Instagram. Instagram's great for restaurants. Today, wait until Facebook changes the algorithm or does something to it. Or there's a new one that pops up. Who knows, right? Maybe Easy Diner is going to invent something that's better than Instagram. I don't know. We'll see. But my point is, if you get too hung up on in the digital realm on how you're delivering your story instead of the storytelling itself, you're going to lose focus and you're not going to get the results you want.
Absolutely. I think that's very pertinent advice. Nivedeeta, the next question is for you. When you look at hiring somebody, right, at this point, right, what is the skill set that are a must do? What is the skill set that you require for somebody to be able to make the cut? Can you give us top 3 skills?
Yes. Someone who has a holistic view of communication, which was not, if we looked at our PR scope of work or key deliverables when we hired a PR manager or a PR leader, it was very different 5 years ago. And today, when we look at our new definition of who is a PR leader for IKEA, who are we looking at? It's someone who is passionate about working with influencers, not only media, influencing our customers and co-workers and our stakeholders alike. It is somebody who is curious, someone who is able to collaborate and cooperate with not only the media world by itself, but also with the different agencies, with internal stakeholders. So like I would say a superman or a superwoman who is able to be the red thread or the spider in the web for many activities, because like Paul said, we don't know what's going to happen 5 years from today, and it's really important to keep our eyes, ears open, to listen in and take in external perspectives of what's happening around in today's world. None of us know everything around us, and things are changing all the time. So someone like that, in short.
Awesome. Yeah, I do agree that you have to be cognizant of what is happening around you. And while today, like you mentioned, that Instagram is important, we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow or maybe 5 years from now. And you're right. Let's wait for Facebook to play around with the algorithms a little more, and well, we're back to square one. All the tried and tested strategies go out of the window, right?
That's right. Yep.
Yeah. So there's another interesting question for all our panelists. Some reports have highlighted that audiences won't be able to find a difference between paid, owned, and earned media in the next couple of years. What are your thoughts on it? Yeah. Mohit, you want to go first?
Could you ask the question again, please?
Yeah. Some reports have highlighted that audiences won't be able to find a difference between paid, earned, and earned media in the next couple of years, right? We've already seen that with, BrandNet, MediaNet, and all of those, where between paid and earned, there is a lot of difficulty that common consumers have in terms of recognizing these, right? And now there are reports that state that paid, earned, and owned, between these three, it is very difficult for common consumers to be able to differentiate between each one of them, right? What is your perspective on it?
I think authenticity will always remain relevant and will always remain important. Look at what happened with WhatsApp recently. If you think that you are not authentic with your customers, you are not true with your customers, or at least your customers do not assume that you are being authentic, then you will start losing them. So I think authenticity will remain important, and some tools will come up. So the more you try and merge these, someone will come with a tool to unmerge them. That's what I feel. You're mute.
Sorry, Paul, what's your perspective on this?
So I agree with Mohit. I think authenticity is the most important thing. But I also think it's important, if you are producing owned media, to let your audience know that it's owned media. You can't pretend that it's editorial media. So here in the States, some of the oldest owned media comes from companies like Coca-Cola. And Coca-Cola started this before the internet. They had a magazine called Journeys. And people said, why does Coca-Cola have a magazine? And it didn't make as much sense then, but they now have a complete digital platform. And when you go to Coca-Cola Journeys, you know that it's the Coca-Cola company, but it's the fact that the content is authentic and engaging. It's like being invited to somebody's party. It's a party that you want to be at. And I think that's really what's important about successful owned media. You need to be authentic. You need to let people know it is indeed owned media, but that's not going to stop people from coming to it if the content is good.
Absolutely. I think content wins at every step. Nivedeeta, how do you, kind of make that differentiation? Do you let your consumers know that this is owned versus paid versus earned?
I think what's important is the consistency of the messaging. Why we're doing it on different platforms could be different, but how as a brand, be truthful, consistent, and honest, and talk about the things that matter to the right audiences. And I feel that there will always be a difference in the way the brand talks and how it is being reported in by different medias. So what's really important is how it's all tying in together for the brand, why we are kind of communicating, what we are communicating on the different channels. So I think there will always be a differentiation, or there should be a differentiation, because they are different platforms, right? And all should come together, but they are kind of.
Yeah. I think I agree. It is important for all of us as communicators also to advise our clients, to be able to tell them that you need to tell your audience that this is where the information comes in, the information sources necessary. So we have another interesting question from our audience for all our panelists. Apart from your own set of work that you've done, they would like to know any global examples of successful owned media, like the one that you quoted about Coke, right? Coca-Cola. Are there any other successful owned media examples that have caught your eye? Yeah. Mohit, you want to go first on that?
Dishoom in London. And
Which one, sorry?
Dishoom.
Okay.
It's an Irani cafe, so very, very nicely done brand, and I really admire how they did their blog and their website. And later on, I felt they made it more transactional, but what they came up with initially and the stories, I really enjoyed what Dishoom was doing in terms of their own media.
Interesting. I'm going to look them up. Nivedeeta, any global examples that caught your eye?
Yes, I would say other than Coke, Nike, they have done. I mean, especially in I think about a few years ago when they launched women. It was not about a sportswear or a sports shoe. It was more about how the brand represented itself as um,
Right.
talking about grit, about willpower, about bringing a change into how we look at things in the world. So that stayed with me for a long time, and I follow them quite a bit to see what they come out with next. I think they've been able to make a big impact in terms of what they would like to stand for and how they would like to be. Then I also follow a lot our Mumbai police, which is not a global example, but how they have used their Twitter channel
Absolutely. Yeah.
to take away that we all have a notion of police being strict to be bad people, but I think they have gone a long way, come a long way, trying to relate to the common people in the local context, bringing out communication about road safety, about drunken driving, about how they just I remember one of their first tweets said, let's meet somewhere else and not just in the police station, right? So more friendly, shedding the perception of being the bad people on the roads. So I follow them quite a bit, and I like the way they are. Recently, I think they had this campaign around if you honk, then they will not let you drive. So they kept on the red light until and unless people stopped honking. That's kind of a punishment. It's a really funny thing, but it became effective, and it's
Yeah,
also a
I
good
remember that.
how it got picked up in earned media across the world. It's not only in India, but I saw that CNN and all these other media houses, they picked up talking how they have been using this effectively. Then I also want to talk a little bit about how IKEA globally we take a lot of inspiration from India, to look at each, for example, countries like Italy and Southeast Europe. They have
Right.
identified issues that are really relevant to the society. For example, in Italy, we ran a LGBT campaign supporting them during COVID, when they were homeless and when people were um, willing to give them, spaces. IKEA is all about the home. We are a home furnishings company, so we really took, a relevance to that, and conducted a social media campaign supporting this community because we stand for equality, diversity across the world. So that's something that we take inspiration from, how we work on different topical issues that are relevant to local society. So at the moment, we are also trying to see what is the connect for the Indian community, and how can we, as a brand, associate ourselves in bringing about a change. That's really important for us as a brand. And globally, we've done some fantastic work. We are, learning and trying to do something which is for India. Yeah.
Fabulous. And I love the examples you quoted. I think Mumbai Police is a very unique example and quite a favorite with a lot of people. Right? Paul, I want to hear from you some of your favorites or examples from owned media.
Sure. So I mentioned the example from Coca-Cola already. I'll give you a couple others from global brands. General Electric is a large company that has operations around the world, obviously started in the United States. They have
Right.
something called the GE Report. It's an entire website that's journalistic in style, and it's all stories about General Electric, people, their products. In fact, it's set up much like a newspaper would be set up with sections. And
Right.
their sections, they don't have sports or lifestyle or cooking. They have aviation, energy, healthcare, research. So that would be another example. Another global brand that does a really good job is Cisco, the technology company. They have an entire video series that's journalistic called My Networked Life, and they're fun to watch. It's the website itself is not particularly beautiful to look at, but the videos are really good. And along with that, of course, we're talking technology. There's
Right.
blogs that explain everything because sometimes you need to follow the instructions to get your technology to work properly, I guess.
Yeah, and I think it'll be a nice way to kind of showcase how to follow instructions, because I think most of us don't. That's the most boring part about using technology. You have to follow
Yes.
to set them up. Very neat. So we're running out of time. I have a last couple of questions for the entire panel. Top 3 skills that you feel that PR professionals need to have at this point of time to survive 2021 or rather thrive in 2021. Yeah, Mohit, you want to go first on that?
So I think it's important to use technology the right way. So if you're writing I'll give you an example of a content piece. So if you're writing a content piece about top 5 places in Indiranagar, top 5 restaurants in Indiranagar, it's important to have a call to action with that. That's what Paul also had mentioned earlier. So it's important to use the technology of today to lead to more and more transactions, but also build your brand right.
Nivedeeta, top 3 skills.
Yes, top 3, I would say. First one, curiosity. We need to remain curious. We don't know everything. Nobody knows everything. So we need to ask questions and keep learning. The second one I would say is empathy, because especially keeping in mind today's situation where we don't know where, when things will, come back to normal. I think it's really important internally and externally to be able to understand context and act accordingly. And the third one, I think, is to continue to upskill, because it's not easy. We talk about a lot of things that we must do, but it's not easy. It's to be able to learn, keep learning, and also develop ourselves, right? Take care of ourselves. That's important.
Absolutely. All 3 skills that a PR professional needs to develop to be able to manage owned media.
And I'm just going to follow on what Nivedeeta said about curiosity. I think that's the number 1 skill. And also kind of picking up on what she shared. The number 2 skill is you got to be a lifelong learner. As I said earlier today, we don't know what technologies we're going to be using 5 years from now. And as she just pointed out, with this global pandemic, we don't know how things are going to change even in the next month or 6 months in terms of how we're going to communicate. So curiosity, being a lifelong learner, and then, as we say in the States, a table stake, meaning it's a necessity, a foundation. You have to be a good communicator, a good storyteller. That gets you in the door, but if you're not curious and if you're not a lifelong learner, you're not going to succeed.
Absolutely. I think all very relevant advice, and I'm sure the audience that is listening in today will learn a lot from it, will take back a lot from it. My last question for the day for each one of the panelists is to help our audience understand what keeps you in PR. With so many things that are changing, and I think this is one of the most dynamic fields that exists in terms of the communication bouquet. What keeps you in PR? Yeah. Nivedeeta, you want to go first on that?
I'll give a short answer. I think it is ability or the chance or the opportunity to be able to strengthen the brand position especially during these times. In the last year or so, within IKEA, we've added trust as one of the components which we want to measure in different markets, in all our markets, and we're figuring out how to set a goal to that for the different markets, but it was not there before, right? I mean, the way communication has stepped up and how we have been in our roles, how we have, contributed to the last 1 year is unimaginable. So I would say the opportunity to make a difference to the brand, and it's coming up now more than ever before.
Awesome. Mohit, why do you continue to remain in communication?
So, as I mentioned earlier, it's no longer important that you make a good product or a brilliant product. Sorry, not important. It's no longer enough. Earlier, I'll give you the example of a restaurant. You would build a good restaurant, price it well, have great food, have great chefs, locate it well, and it would be full all the time. Now, it's no longer true. You need to distribute your product well, and with the right associations, let's say, be it an easy diner, have your own media, have paid media, do earned media. it's important to distribute well. And that's why communication has become more and more important. And it will be, relevant and will keep being, will still have its own relevance and importance.
Absolutely. I think communication is one of the hallmarks of good leadership as well. And every brand needs to do that. Paul, your perspective.
So, as a former journalist, I've always been interested in the world at large. And PR is a great field for people who want to make a difference, make connections, and help people get results. And I enjoy the variety and the ever-changing nature of it, even in tough times like this. That's what keeps me going on a daily basis.
Awesome. Absolutely awesome. I love the way that you put it. And I hope it does inspire a lot of our audience out there to be able to continue to be in PR. Thank you so much for being on the panel today.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for having us.
And on that note, I will close the discussion. Any parting shots? Yeah, okay.
No.
Right. So thank you so much for being on the panel today with us. Really appreciate you taking out the time to speak to all of us. We've overshot our time by a little bit, but I'm sure everybody would have, enjoyed the conversation. I was enjoying it a lot. And again, thank you so much for taking out the time to speak to all of us today.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. All right. So thank you for being a part of this discussion today. And that was Paul, Ferriga, Nivedeeta, and Mohit, who joined us today for a discussion on owned media. I do hope you found this as insightful as I have. I'm sure there are a lot of ideas buzzing around in your head right now, and you can't wait to start speaking to your brands about them. I know we've not been able to answer all your questions. So if you have more questions, then put them in the comment section below. Our panelists will answer them for you as and when they can. So keep them coming. And a big thank you to our media partner, Advertising and Media Insider India, and our industry partner, PR Boutiques International, for collaborating with us on this session. And yes, this would not have been possible without the support of my co-founders, Sonali Sokal and Pooja Trehan. Before we wind up, please do take out 10 minutes today to fill up our quick PRPOI survey that closes today. You will find the link above on our Facebook page. We know you must be a little tired of answering surveys by now, but this one is important because it will help us upskill to help upskill you better. Yeah, got that right. Take a look. See you next Saturday for another exciting Saturday live session from all of us at PRPOI.